They are funky punks from Hollywood who happened upon an entirely new sound.
It kind of meant the world to us, and there was an extremely intense sense of vitality in what we did.
If you look back on it at that time, it was so out of context of what was going on, and it was so fresh and original.
It literally came out of nowhere.
From the start, the Red Hot Chili Peppers came out swinging.
It felt great to be on stage naked, you know, with this sort of exaggerated phallus, you know, dangling between our legs.
But just beneath the Chili Peppers' flamboyant front lies an unflappable friendship.
Those guys are my real brothers, you know? Those are the ones who I spilled my guts out to. Those are the ones I cried to. Those are the ones I poured my heart out to.
Sometimes I feel like I don't have a partner.
Their brotherhood was put to the test by the painful loss of one of its members.
He just made a mistake, took the wrong drugs, the wrong time, and he didn't make it, you know? And it's just really
The Chili Peppers survived the tragic death of one of their own, only to witness the near-fatal fall of another.
I just thought he was going to die. I mean, I was sure that John was going to die.
Scar tissue that I wish you saw.
But after a miraculous recovery, the rejuvenated Chili Peppers broke new ground and went on to achieve their greatest success.
It was like, you know, having someone die in your family and then come back to life.
Now, the hard truth and riveting reality of the Red Hot Chili Peppers, the story behind the music. After more than 2 decades, the Chili Peppers are hotter than ever. One-time musical rebels who've come back from the brink to outshine and outsell most of their pop peers.
They like us. People still want to come and see us. It's awesome.
I have a funny feeling that we're just getting started, which is pretty bizarre because, you know, we've been together forever.
Today, they're a global sensation. But when the world was getting its first taste of the Red Hots, many thought the Chili Peppers were anything but cool.
We would like to dedicate this set to Sinead O'Connor's Split D.
Early on, critics dismissed them as shallow, sex-crazed Southern Californians who had rolled onto the music scene riding skateboards.
They were seen as a joke band or a party band or pretty much just like a goof act that probably wouldn't go anywhere other than break up in a couple years, maybe.
Branded as tattooed hooligans by some, they were held up as heroes by a lost generation in search of a new sound.
There was nothing like the Red Hot Chili Peppers. They were fresh, they had a total sense of humor about them, but they were really cool, and they had this energy.
They came on the scene and just blew the doors off of traditional music as people knew it at the time, period.
The Peppers say their unique sound and unusual strength comes from a special bond, a link that formed in childhood and has grown with each passing year.
You know, we loved each other. We were family, and because of that, you know, we were able to create this band.
Michael Flea Balzery, Anthony Kiedis, and Hillel Slovak began their brotherhood in Hollywood back in '78. Anthony and Flea were just 15 when their worlds first collided on the campus of Fairfax High.
I first met him, I had a kid in a headlock, and I was like, I'm gonna kill you.
And I went up to Flea and I said, you know, if you lay another hand on him, I'm gonna have to rough you up.
And he looked so mean, I laid off and rode away. And anyway, we ended up sitting next to each other in driver's ed class in high school.
They became very close. I remember Michael coming home and saying, I met someone I can really talk to. And they were pretty close. Well, I guess they've remained it all these many years later.
When Anthony met Flea, he was already a star of sorts. Flea's music teachers believed he was the most talented trumpet player they'd heard since the legendary Herb Alpert, who'd attended Fairfax High decades earlier. It was Flea's stepfather who fed the young boys' appetite for jazz. He was a musician who frequently held jam sessions in their home.
I mean, just seeing all those guys together in a room, sucking and blowing and hitting and playing his instruments, I would roll on the floor in hysterical laughter, just, you know, and it was the first time I really felt the intangible, magical effects of music.
When they'd have sessions at the house, they'd let him sit in a little bit. And I knew he was kind of special a little bit because one of these jazz clinicians stared at him and said, "Where the f*** that kid get that sound?"
While Flea was belting out jazz riffs, his friend Anthony Kiedis was running from audition to audition in hopes of becoming an actor. At age 11, Anthony moved from his mother's home in Michigan to live with his father in L.A. His dad was an aspiring actor struggling to make it in the movie business.
I knew that Hollywood had something in the air that Michigan did not, because I had been out here visiting my dad on summer vacations, and I mean, you could just taste it. There was psychotic beauty in the air, and I wanted to live in that air. I was going to go to Hollywood and live with my dad and be a movie star.
Anthony didn't become a star of the big screen, but he did appear in a handful of movies and television shows.
I thought maybe you could help me with my homework.
Yeah, you know, like you did with Frankie.
Come on, it's Oliver School. You have been voted the girl most wanted to do homework with.
He was often cast as a streetwise kid, a role that, thanks to his dad, Anthony was well suited to play.
When I came out to California, my dad was very involved in chasing girls and having different girlfriends and very open about his sexual existence.
Anthony says his dad was a flamboyant playboy who introduced him to sex and drugs, all at a tender age.
I started dabbling with heroin when I was 14. That's the first time I tried it. And it was kind of by accident, actually. I thought it was cocaine. And it was white, and it was sitting on a table, so I went and did it, and I got high, and I liked it very much. You know, I thought it was a beautiful feeling.
Anthony was far more schooled in the ways of the world than most of his friends at Fairfax High. But for the most part, he was still a typical teen who liked hanging out with his buddy Flea and their mutual friend Hillel Slovak.
Hillel and I and Flea, we were actually really a trio. And we just spent a lot of time listening to music together, getting high, you know, talking about life, going to the mountains, going to Yosemite, going on these backpacking trips, just really becoming, you know, lifelong friends.
From day one, James Slovak says his older brother Hillel shared a special chemistry with Flea and Anthony.
All the people that I've seen, nobody is like those three, and they just found each other, and maybe it was fate.
Growing up, Hillel and James shared a bedroom. Money was tight in the Slovak home. But when Hillel was 13, he was given a guitar for his bar mitzvah.
He would play all day long, listen to Jimi Hendrix and Kiss. Those were his two biggest bands. And I would go to sleep around 10 or 10:30, and he would still be playing guitar in the room. And I'd beg him to stop because I need to go to sleep, and he'd play for another 2 hours.
Hillel's incessant guitar playing made a huge impression on Flea.
At the time, I didn't like rock music at all. When I was a kid, I just thought rock music was for idiots. I liked Louis Armstrong, Dizzy Gillespie. I wanted to be a jazz trumpet player. He's the first person who got me to listen to rock music. He's just like, this is Jimi Hendrix, listen to this, and Zeppelin, and, you know, I was like, wow.
When they were 16, Hillel taught Flea how to play bass, and soon they started a band.
Flea loved playing with Hillel a lot, and they had a supremely magical musical connection that you know, doesn't really happen that often.
Anthony, Flea, and Hillel graduated from high school in 1980, but the friends remained inseparable. The trio knocked around for a few years. Anthony did a short stint at UCLA, while Flea and Hillel continued to pursue music. Then one night in the summer of '83, Anthony, on a whim, joined his friends on stage. The band improvised while Anthony rapped a poem he'd written entitled, Out in L.A.
Something very volcanic occurred when we all went up there, and we had no idea what to expect. It was just for the hell of it, and it was so much fun. Something really special happened that night.
We had one song that played for 3 minutes, you know. The club owner said, I want you guys to come back, I want you guys to come back, and we came back and played. And we had like 3 songs this next time. And literally it was like lines around the block right away.
Out of that single impromptu performance, the Red Hot Chili Peppers were unexpectedly born. Accidentally, they had created a whole new genre, a potent mixture of rap, funk, and thrash that launched a revolution in rock. In the summer of 1983, a spontaneous one-off performance at a dive bar on LA's Sunset Strip had given birth to a new and curiously original band.
It was just wild. We were out of control. We were wild. The band was out of control. Everything we did was over the top, and that music was a part of it.
Literally overnight, the newly formed Red Hot Chili Peppers became the darlings of Hollywood's underground club scene. Then in the fall of '83, they pulled a stunt that thrust them into the limelight.
We were playing a place called the Kit Kat Club, which was a strip bar. And I think by this time maybe we had 4 or 5 songs.
They may have been short on songs, but the boys rose to the occasion when the crowd begged for more. For their encore, Anthony, Flea, Hillel, and drummer Jack Irons returned to the stage sporting nothing but tube socks.
And so we were backstage and we were all nervous and excited and should we do this? Should we do this? Yeah, let's just do it. Let's just do it.
I saw the first sock deal, the very first one, and it's one of the most amusing things I ever did see in my life.
It felt great to be on stage naked, you know, with this sort of exaggerated phallus, you know, dangling between our legs. And there's always the element of danger because, you know, someone would reach up and grab the sock off. It was a gas.
Word quickly spread of the Red Hot Chili Peppers' outrageous display. Within weeks, they were performing to sold-out crowds at LA's hippest clubs.
When I first saw them play, I'd never seen such freedom on stage. Flea was playing so aggressively that he'd worn a hole in his thumb. And he was literally screaming in pain between each song because it hurt so bad. And someone kept coming out and pouring crazy glue into the hole.
Flea's unique style of slap bass, fused with Hillel's searing guitar work, gave the band a sound never heard before.
Hillel was very magical. He was an amazing musician. Hillel. He had this style that was very his own, very unique. I loved Hillel. We all did.
He always wanted to create new music. It was all about creating a whole new sound. He didn't want to be like everybody else.
By the end of '83, the Red Hot Chili Peppers were the most talked-about band in Southern California. And to the surprise of their critics, the Chili Peppers landed a record deal just 6 months after they first rocked in their socks.
Red Hot Chili Peppers landed a deal with an EMI subsidiary, and it was like, what? How did that happen? I don't get it.
Over the next couple of years, the Chili Peppers released 2 albums. The first, they say, failed to capture the essence of their sound. So for their second album, Freaky Styley, they recruited legendary producer and funk master George Clinton.
I wanted to be on the scene with whoever was going to be doing the funk when he came back and be not old school, but part of what was happening then. And the Chili Peppers was that raw, straight out, free your mind, your ass will follow. You rock out with your out. You know what I'm saying?
Under Clinton's guidance, the Chili Peppers refined their revolutionary blend of funk, punk, and rock.
It was the best thing ever, being embraced by George Clinton, such a prolific force in the history of music. You know, in this century, one of the greatest, liked us.
After the release of Freaky Styley, the band toured non-stop. Mainstream FM was still spinning hair bands, but college radio was getting hot for the Chili Peppers.
The Chili Peppers' strength was that anybody who came to the show just went bonkers. I mean, they were awesome live.
The Chili Peppers played hard and partied harder. Casual drug use had long been a part of Flea, Anthony, and Hillel's routine. But in '85, dope was starting to drive them apart. Anthony, who had been an occasional heroin user, was now hooked.
It really kind of ended up sinking its teeth into me, you know, over the course of a couple of years maybe, where I would do it one weekend and then, you know, go to band practice every day. And I'd say, I won't do that for a couple of weeks. And then it would be, oh, I won't do that for a week. And then, oh, I won't do that for a few days. Well, I did just do it yesterday, but this will be the only time I do it 2 days in a row. And then, you know, I just started buying the lie.
Anthony wasn't the only one buying the lie. During the recording sessions for Freaky Styley, he discovered Hillel was secretly abusing heroin.
Hillel started a little bit later than I did and was equally as naive when our life was getting sucked away. We were just too swallowed up to be cognizant of it and so, whoa, we gotta stop this, we gotta stop this. I mean, at that point, you're gone.
While Flea admits he did his share of drugs, heroin, he says, was just too hard to handle. Instead, Flea tried his best to be supportive of his two closest friends, both struggling with addiction.
Like I said about Hillel, I wish I could have been there for him more. You know, and with Anthony, when I see him go through his troubles, I love him. I love Anthony. You know, I want to be there for him.
In January '88, the Chili Peppers headed out on a European tour. But shortly after arriving in England, Hillel became ill and started to undergo heroin withdrawal.
He was in terrible pain, and I think that was the first time he realized that he was in trouble with this thing, and that it wasn't just a casual affair, and it wasn't just for fun, and it wasn't just a mind-expanding trip, that it had its meat hooks in his heart and wasn't letting go so easily.
Hillel's health was in decline, and it was getting harder to conceal his addiction. Then a roadie concerned for his well-being approached Hillel's brother.
He said, your brother's doing heroin. I didn't believe it at first, but he said, you know, you need to know it's getting out of hand. No one wants to tell you. So I confronted my brother about it. He begged me not to tell my mom, so I didn't. I would have told my mom if I had a second chance.
At the beginning of 1988, it looked as if it was going to be a breakthrough year for the Red Hot Chili Peppers. Their new album, Uplift Mofo Party Plan, was outselling their previous two records, and their shows were drawing big crowds. On the road, it seemed Anthony and Hillel were taking steps to turn their lives around. They agreed to help each other steer clear of heroin.
I had mentioned it to Hillel. I said, you know, Hillel, I think we should both seriously look at being clean. And we talked about it, and we thought, we're both going to perish. You know, we're going to lose the band. And we thought, yeah, we really should, because we'll have a lot more fun, and we can make a lot more music, and life will be better without it.
Entries in a journal reveal Hillel's desire to stay clean. James Slovak says his brother's diary outlines his devotion and love for music.
How I know my brother was hurting to get off of drugs is he writes stuff like this. He says, F drugs. Music is my destiny. Even though I don't necessarily feel it now, I know soon I will feel that this experience will make me stronger.
We were touring in Europe, and both Hillel and Anthony were having problems at the time, but they were, as a team, united to clean up. And they did. They were doing great. We've been working really hard for a long, long time, and they were kind of fried. We came back, and I think pretty much everybody said, hey, I'm going to go my way, you go your way, and I'll speak to you in like 3 weeks.
But without the mutual support between Hillel and Anthony, the time apart proved to be ill-fated.
When we got back from playing, we were pretty much just on a clean-headed level. And we both disappeared into our own worlds of getting high again.
Several days later, on Friday, June 24th, James received an unexpected phone call from Hillel.
He told me that he was thinking about the heroin again, and I begged him not to do it. And told him it was like Russian roulette, that, you know, spinning the barrel, you can die at any time, and there was a big pause, and he said I was right. And that was like actually the first time he said, I love you. And I said to him, I said, let's start hanging out more often, let's start doing things together. And he said, definitely, definitely. And I didn't have that chance, because after that...
That would be the last conversation James would have with his brother. Hillel hung up the phone and shut himself off from the world.
We couldn't find Hillel, you know. I'm their manager. My job was basically to be a pain in the ass and call everybody every day. Hey, what are you doing? How are you? What's going on? And I couldn't get an answer on Hillel. We called, you know, anybody, you guys hear from Hillel? You hear from Hillel? Nobody heard, nobody heard.
The weekend passed, and still no one was able to reach Hillel. Then on Monday, June 27th, the horrible truth was discovered. Police entered Hillel's apartment and found his body. Authorities believe a few days prior, on June 25th, 1988, 26-year-old Hillel Slovak had overdosed on heroin.
The night he called me and said, I love you, he knew he was going to do heroin that night. He was ashamed of it, I'm pretty sure. He was like, how did I get wrapped up in this drug?
I was going through a hard time, and, you know, they just made a mistake, took the wrong drugs, wrong time, and he didn't make it, you know.
I did not accept the news. I was, you know, very much under the influence when I got it. I came back after being gone for a few days from my house, and my girlfriend told me, and I just refused to accept it.
Anthony, having lost one of his closest friends, escaped to a small fishing village in Mexico. There he tried in vain to kick heroin on his own.
I didn't actually stop using at that point. For whatever reason, you would think your best friend dies. Okay, I've had enough. But it doesn't work like that, at least with my experience.
10 days later, Anthony returned to Los Angeles and checked himself into drug rehab. Though it would be a lifelong battle that he wouldn't always win, Anthony was determined to stay clean.
I got back from Mexico and got out of the hospital and, you know, one more time said, okay, I'm going to be cool now. And then it was Flea and Jack and myself and our manager, Lindy, sitting on a sailboat in the Pacific Ocean. And we decided to talk about what we were going to do.
Saddened by his friend's death, Jack Irons quietly announced that he was leaving the band.
And he left, and sort of Flea and I looked at each other and we said, you know, what do we do?
My friends are so depressed.
After losing their guitarist and drummer, only two of the Chili Peppers' four founding friends remained. But Anthony and Flea decided to carry on.
We knew that we weren't done yet. We knew that the life of the Red Hot Chili Peppers, you know, still had untapped creative energy, you know, that we didn't want to go to waste. And he and I were still best friends.
For a new guitarist, they didn't have to look any further than one of their biggest fans, 18-year-old guitar prodigy John Frusciante.
He's definitely a genius. He's got that mad scientist, guitar, art, love, spirit, genius in him, but he doesn't know how to drive a car. He doesn't have a credit card. You know, he doesn't function in the same road with the rest of the world, which is what makes him great.
When I first joined the band when I was 18, Flea and Anthony called me up. I kept real cool when I was on the phone with them, and then I hung up the phone and I screamed, "Calling the Red Hot Chili Peppers!" And I ran across the house and I jumped up on a wall, and there was like these footmarks on the wall of that apartment.
With John Frusciante on board, it was time to find a new drummer. The hard-hitting Chad Smith was the last of more than 30 to audition.
We just started playing, and we had this connection, like right off the bat, a musical like explosion that happened. I'm yelling, I'm playing, I go, come on, let's go! Ah! I'm yelling, please, we're playing. And literally a month later, I'm standing out on the rocks in Malibu with a sock on. Here I am on the rocks with the sock on my dick. I'm in the band now.
Just as quickly, the newly formed foursome was in the studio recording the band's fourth CD. Released in September '89, Mother's Milk became the Chili Peppers' first gold album.
I remember the first time I heard them like on a modern and big rock radio station, my jaw was on the floor. In the mid-'80s, man, it was inconceivable.
Mother's Milk was a great time. We were touring like crazy. We were absolutely rocking, feeling really good.
For the first time, this cult band was enjoying commercial success. Hits like Knock Me Down kept Mother's Milk on the U.S. charts for over 8 months.
I think that song kind of, for me, totally embodied the spirit of the album. It was very triumphant.
And, you know, Chili Peppers were doing their thing for years, and then I think everyone else kind of caught up to what we were doing.
Fans around the world went wild and stopped at nothing to get a piece of the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
I was backstage one time. It was way after the show, and these two girls were meandering around the backstage, and they come in the room, and they're like, no, they're gone. They left a while ago. Was there any of their stuff around? Oh, well, actually, in fact, there's Flea's underwear. They used to just play nothing but a pair of, like, tight white underwear. And I swear to you, these girls dove for it. It was like, you know, going after the bouquet, you know, they're like, they dove for it, and they're like playing tug of war, and one of them finally rips it out of the other one's hand, takes it, squeezes it, drinks this man's sweat off of his underwear, and says, now I have a part of him inside of me. I mean, to this day, you know, I just...
For their next album, Blood Sugar Sex Magic, the Chili Peppers teamed up with producer Rick Rubin, best known for his work with the Beastie Boys.
They didn't really fit into the category of any of the type of music I'd dealt with before. And I thought it would really be a fun record to make, and it was.
That should be the vibe, like what you just... Yeah. It is so hard.
Rubin worked closely with the band, encouraging them to explore new territory and expand their sound. That collaboration gave life to some of the most influential music in decades. During the sessions, Rick happened across a poem Anthony had written. Put to music, it would become a Chili Peppers classic.
I'd gone to Anthony's house to discuss lyrics with him, and he was showing me his notebooks of different lyrics he had written. Then I found Under the Bridge and asked, you know, what's this?
I was thinking about my past because I hadn't done drugs for a few years, and kind of reflecting on all the damage I had done and all the people that I had tortured emotionally. And so I wrote this poem.
I could just tell that he was opening his heart, and there were beautiful words, and it wasn't sung yet. All it was words on a page. You could just tell from looking at the words. They were special.
I think he was touched by it, and he said, why don't you go in and sing it to him? And I thought, okay, you know, it's very personal and kind of revealing and, you know, a little bit embarrassing, but I'll go in and I'll sing it to him. And I read it to him, and I sang it to him, and I probably sang it out of tune and, you know, using 3 different keys at the same time. But they heard what I was trying to express, and instead of laughing, they both went to their instruments and just started playing.
It's hard to believe there's nobody out there. It's hard to believe that I'm all alone. At least I have her love. The city, she loves me. Lonely as I am, together we cry.
Released in October '91, Blood Sugar Sex Magic would go on to sell more than 8 million copies. It was truly a landmark album. And to support it, the band embarked on a marathon world tour. The Red Hot Chili Peppers were now playing stadiums with passionate fans.
Every single person, every mother in this whole place, every single boy and every single girl has to take off their shirt.
If he said to, like, take your shirt off and spin it in the air, everybody in the audience would do it.
And wave it around their head like a wild helicopter like this for the whole song. Don't stop until the song is over.
To me, that was like, wow, how does it get everyone to listen to him, you know? It's just so intense, like, to see that power over everyone.
The Chili Peppers were red hot, but not everyone was embracing their new fame.
I just didn't like the way everybody was responding to the success that we were having. I was confused myself about how to deal with it, as everybody was.
As the tour wore on, John grew increasingly disenchanted and distanced himself from the rest of the band.
John was just up there like he didn't give about anything, you know? and you can't be in a group and not care. It's going to show. And it did. A lot of the shows were terrible.
You can only enjoy it for so much when the band isn't talking, you know. Me and Anthony basically toured together for a year without really talking at all, and things got worse and worse.
Then on May 7th, 1992, tensions between the band and John Frusciante came to a head. Just hours before a concert at one of Japan's largest arenas, John told the band he was quitting the Chili Peppers.
I remember calling our tour manager at the venue and just saying, I just got in, how's everything going? And he said, well, it's not going really well. John won't go on stage. I mean, what do you mean won't go on stage? He quit. I said, he quit. He said, he quit. I said, he don't quit. Tell him to get his ass on the stage. I said, I'll be right there.
The band convinced John to play that evening, but by the following morning, he was gone. The Chili Peppers returned home and regrouped, but they weren't idle for long. In July '92, the band grabbed guitarist Eric Marshall and hit the road to headline the Lollapalooza tour. 34 cities, 32 sellouts, and nearly 1 million concertgoers later, the Chili Peppers had established themselves as the kings of rock.
It was great. We played Lollapalooza. We had a blast. You know, there's no tension. It was like, let's have fun. And we went out and had a lot of fun.
With no hope of John Frusciante ever returning, Flea invited Jane's Addiction guitarist Dave Navarro to join the Chili Peppers in September '93.
I know I'm new, but you think you can get the door?
The new lineup headed into the studio, but by all accounts, recording was a shaky process. The band had trouble adjusting to Dave Navarro's musical style.
We just come from completely different musical backgrounds, completely different ideas about music. Dave's a great guy. You know, he's really smart. He makes a great rock star. He's a hell of a rock guitar player. But for some reason, we could just never really all four get on the same page.
It took the Chili Peppers over a year to complete One Hot Minute. But when it was finally released in August of '95, critics felt it lacked focus. And with Dave Navarro leaving the band soon afterwards, it seemed the Chili Peppers' red-hot ride might be over. From day one, it's been an amazing, if not a peculiar chemistry that ignited the Red Chili Peppers' passion.
That period of my life had run its course, and I knew that, and it was time for a new chapter to begin.
For those who witnessed his decline, John's recovery was nothing short of miraculous. But it would be just the first in a series of astounding events.
I just went over to his house and asked him, what would you think about being in a band again? And I just remember his face turned bright red, bright beet red, and he was like, I think that'd be a good idea.
In April 1998, after a 6-year absence, John Frusciante reunited with the rest of the Red Hots, and the band embarked on a new chapter.
Now he is like the most focused, dedicated, awesome, awe-inspiring artist that I know. I mean, it's like someone who I'm absolutely challenged to play with because he's so good, and he's so smart, and he's so on it, and it's just amazing. It's really amazing.
We're not taking it for granted and really, realizing what we've got and how special it is.
It was really the best. It was like, having someone die in your family and then come back to life.
And John wasn't the only one coming back to life. After years of chasing his own demons, Anthony says he too has dealt with his addictions.
I finally was able to get honest with myself and say, you know what, you're just a liar if you think you can go out and do that and not destroy your life and everything around you. Whereas before I kept thinking somehow I could get away with it, somehow I could manage it, somehow I could control it, which is basically lying to myself.
In the summer of '99, the rejuvenated Red Hots released their 7th album, Californication. The record was peppered with bittersweet songs inspired by the hard lessons the band had learned.
For us, it's really about always staying true to our hearts and always being open to grow, even though it's painful, because growth is always painful.
How long will I slide?
For the Peppers, pain paid off. Headlined by introspective songs like Scar Tissue and Other Side, Californication became the group's most popular album to date, selling a stunning 13 million copies worldwide.
With the release of Californication, the Red Hot Chili Peppers re-emerged as a vital act. Nobody would have expected it. At that time was the peak of this teen pop craze.
It was very surprising, actually, because we'd kind of not been around for a while.
The Peppers packed their bags for a triumphant world tour, then returned to LA to work on their follow-up album, By the Way. It is set for release in July of 2002.
We spent a lot of time in the rehearsal studio just going over every note and trying to find the most simple, beautiful way we could to express, you know, the most complex feelings.
The music we've done now has surpassed my expectations of what I ever would have thought we were capable of doing. We don't have any limitations on ourselves anymore.
To the Red Hot Chili Peppers, it is only the latest chapter in a long journey. One that began back in high school when 3 boys built a friendship with their insatiable enthusiasm for life and music.
I think that if Hillel could look down and see what we're doing today, I think he'd be incredibly proud and happy for us, because even though he never really got to experience this aspect of the dream, I think he'd be down for it.
We have all this time behind us to look at and to see where we've made mistakes and what we've done to hurt ourselves or to hurt the band. And it's like now we can be together and we know the bottom line is the love and respect for ourselves and for our music.
Lee and I were made to affect each other. We're almost too close and too much one and the same to even talk sometimes. You know, when Flea cries, I cry. And when Flea smiles, he makes me smile.
Flea, I love you. I love you too. All right, bye. It's